Jasmine Crockett dropped a single sentence in a congressional hearing, one that exposed Melania Trump's secret prenup, and the White House hasn't recovered since there wasn't an empty seat in the Rayburn House office building that morning. The room was packed, the air tight, and the tension impossible to ignore. Officially, it was a routine hearing on small business tax reform. In reality, it was a political powder keg. The country was on edge. The president was under fire. And then, Jasmine Crockett leaned in. She looked composed, too composed. Hair pulled back, charcoal suit crisp, voice even. She waited her turn silently. But by the third interruption from a Republican colleague, her smile thinned. "Are you finished?" she asked quietly, without a flicker of emotion. The room went still. The committee chair tried to move on. Crockett didn't budge. "Since I'm apparently only allowed to speak in fragments," she said, reaching into her folder, "I'll use this moment wisely." She pulled out a small stack of papers, documents she'd alluded to days earlier. But never revealed. Rumors had swirled. Most dismissed them as political theater. Then she dropped it. "Let the record reflect," she began, her tone surgical, "that these documents, certified and time-stamped by the Southern District of Florida, showed that First Lady Melania Trump amended her prenup less than 4 months before President Trump launched his current campaign." It hit like a grenade. Audible gasps. One Republican muttered, "You've got to be kidding." Others simply froze. Crockett wasn't done, and according to 2 insider accounts, she continued, "The amendment includes a contingency clause that activates in the event of a public scandal or criminal indictment." Chaos erupted. People shouted over one another. Aide phones lit up. One staffer sprinted out of the chamber. But the cameras were still rolling. This wasn't a hearing anymore, it was history being made on live television, when another attempt was made to cut her off. Crockett raised her hand calmly. "I will not be silenced," she said. "Not when this administration expects women to smile, sit down, and stay quiet. Not when truth is buried under ego." Outside, #Melania Claus started trending within minutes. A clip of Crockett's words spread like wildfire. Lifestyle bloggers, law students, even former White House staffers were sharing it. Inside, the chair's gavel pounded, desperate for order. But the room was gone. Crockett stacked her papers, leaned back, and exhaled. She wasn't smiling. She didn't need to. She looked like someone who knew exactly what she'd done. A few blocks away, in the West Wing, Donald Trump's phone lit up like a Christmas tree. One aide later said the screen didn't go dark for an hour. What had been a sleepy hearing was now a political 5-alarm fire. But this wasn't the explosion. This was just the fuse. Within the hour, the clip was everywhere: CNN, Fox, MSNBC, even local news in Tulsa and Des Moines. Over and over, the moment played, Crockett's calm voice, the stunned silence, the storm that followed. At 12:17 p.m., Trump's team issued an internal code red. "That's not speculation." Multiple insiders confirmed it. The instruction was clear. Contain Crockett, get ahead of the story, but it was already too late. #Melania Claus hit 1 million tweets in 3 hours. TikTok lawyers broke down the legal terms. Instagram influencers quoted Crockett like scripture. Memes exploded. Meanwhile, in the White House dining room, Trump was having lunch when his chief of staff burst in with a tablet. "You need to see this," he said. Trump watched. And then he snapped, slamming the table so hard the Secret Service outside the door took notice. 2 aides were asked to leave. Another staffer recalled hearing him scream from down the hall, "She wants to drag Melania into this?" He bellowed. "She thinks she's untouchable?" The press office was under siege. Reporters weren't asking about taxes. They wanted to know, why had Melania secretly renegotiated her prenup? And what did that say about her confidence in her husband's future? Back at the Capitol, Crockett had already exited the hearing room. She walked briskly down a back hallway with 2 aides when a young staffer caught up. "You okay?" he asked. She didn't slow down. Never better. She knew what she'd started, and what was coming. Cable news pounced. Some called her reckless. Others hailed it as the most honest moment in Congress all year. One conservative pundit stared into the camera and asked, "Who the hell is feeding her material like that?" But she didn't blink that evening. Crockett posted a short clip from the hearing to her personal account. It had only 4 words: "Truth doesn't need permission." The comment section erupted: praise, fury, questions, admiration. But one thing was clear: everyone suddenly wanted to know who Jasmine Crockett really was. And everyone wanted to know what she might say next. Back at the White House, things were unraveling fast. Melania wasn't there. In fact, she hadn't been seen publicly since a staged photo op at a Miami Children's Hospital 5 days earlier. Now, reporters were camped outside her private Maryland residence, waiting for any sign, any wave, tweet to denial, but there was nothing. No statement. No sighting. Just silence, and the silence was deafening. By early evening, 3 sources inside Trump's campaign confirmed the president was calling donors himself, trying to calm the growing panic. One described the calls as off-script and angry. Another said he kept circling back to the same question: how the hell did she get those documents? That's when the digging began, not just from journalists, but from ex-staffers, legal analysts, and even members of Trump's own party. Everyone wanted to know who leaked the papers. And why now? While Washington spun into chaos, Jasmine Crockett sat quietly at her kitchen table in D.C., sipping ginger tea, phone face down. Her aide, Kia, leaned against the counter behind her. "You sure you want to stay quiet?" Kia asked. "CNN's been calling non-stop. Everyone wants you on air." Crockett looked up. "Let it breathe," she said. "They're already drowning." But silence never lasts in politics, especially when people start asking who lit the match that night. Long after the headlines faded into cable chatter, the real work began, behind closed doors. At 9:42 p.m., inside a secure room near the Lincoln bedroom, 3 White House aides huddled around a folder marked FLOTUS, confidential. It had been pulled from an off-site legal archive earlier that day under direct orders from senior counsel. Inside, timelines, court records, legal memos. And it confirmed everything Crockett had said: the prenup amendment was real. The dates matched. It was signed in Palm Beach, exactly 4 months before Trump launched his campaign. One aide flipped through the documents, jaw tight. "This isn't a coincidence," he muttered. But no one dared say it aloud. Down the hall, Trump paced furiously, barking into the phone. He wasn't fixated on the content, he was obsessed with the betrayal. Someone from his circle had turned. Someone had armed Crockett, a woman he already saw as a threat, with live ammunition. Meanwhile, Melania's personal assistant had locked herself in the guest room. She'd spoken with the First Lady twice, once to brief her on the hearing, once to warn about the media frenzy. Both calls were short: "Tell them nothing," Melania had said, and by morning, that silence still held. Her absence became the headline. Networks ran grainy security footage from Mar-a-Lago, trying to track her down. Inside the West Wing, Trump was still fuming. At a private breakfast meeting with loyal lawmakers, he slammed the table. "She's dragging my wife into this. That's off limits." One senator tried to reason with him, then have Melania deny it. "The silence is killing us." But Trump refused. He didn't want Melania in front of a microphone. He didn't want her anywhere near this. What he wanted was Crockett shut down, cornered, discredited, erased. By midday, a memo was drafted, accused Crockett of spreading unverified conspiracies in a federal hearing. Conservative commentators had already begun pushing that angle, but over at Crockett's office, the mood was calm. Kia handed her a plain manila envelope marked "Do Not Copy." Inside, a letter, postmarked from Naples, Florida, unsigned, but containing 3 pages of emails between a known Trump advisor and Melania's Florida-based attorney. The date? 3 days before the prenup amendment was filed. Crockett read it once. Then again. Kia watched her. "It's solid. You want to go public?" Crockett shook her head. "Not yet. Let them sweat." And they were sweating, especially moderate Republicans. The ones facing tight re-elections. The story wasn't about marriage anymore. It was about control. Power. Trust. It was raw. Personal. And that made it dangerous. By the end of the day, Trump's team realized their mistake. In refusing to engage, they'd let Crockett own the narrative, and once the public seizes on a story like this, it stops being political. It becomes personal. Those are the stories that sink in, that spiral beyond strategy, beyond spin, and the question now spread faster than the clip itself. Where did she get those files? It wasn't just pundits asking. Capitol Hill staffers whispered about it in elevators. Legal experts floated theories on morning shows. Even foreign media picked it up. Someone, somewhere, had handed Jasmine Crockett certified documents tied to the First Lady of the United States, and they were real, back in her D.C. office. Crockett ignored a flood of calls, reporters, advocacy groups, even a San Francisco film crew offering an exclusive. She said nothing. Instead, she sat with Kia and their legal advisor, Marcy Dillard, a no-nonsense lawyer with half-moon glasses. Always slipping down her nose, Marcy flipped through the Naples envelope. "You're covered," she said. "Public record. Certified. Time-stamped. Let them spin." Crockett leaned back and said nothing at all. "They're going to accuse me of planting this. Watch." Crockett's voice was flat, almost bored. Marcy shrugged. "Let them. Truth doesn't need dressing up." But that didn't stop the hunt. Within 48 hours, Trump's legal team launched a full-blown internal review. They traced every document request linked to Melania's financial filings over the past year. Subpoenas flew. Metadata was pulled. Favors were called in from Florida court clerks. This wasn't just political anymore, it was personal. Then, a name surfaced. Not in public. Not yet. But inside GOP circles, whispers grew louder. Gideon Maris, a former campaign advisor who had quietly exited in early spring after clashing with Trump over messaging. Since then, he'd kept a low profile, consulting here and there, teaching the occasional guest lecture at a small college outside Cleveland. But Gideon had something most others didn't: deep, direct access to sensitive campaign materials. Point 1. Ex-staffers swore they saw him in Palm Beach just a week before the prenup amendment was filed. Another recalled his name CC'd on internal emails between Trump's legal team and a West Palm notary, and no proof. No confirmation. Just whispers. Still, 2 nights later, a message appeared, slipped under Crockett's office door. No return address. Handwritten. Just one line: "Gideon is clean. But you're not far off." Kia read it twice, then stepped into the hall to check the security cams. "You believe this?" she asked. Crockett held the note like it was warm. "I think someone's scared. And people only get scared when you're close." Across the aisle, Republican leadership scrambled. A leaked Zoom call between senior campaign staff and high-level donors hit the Washington informant. On it, one donor asked flatly, "If she has more, what else can she drop? And when?" That was the fear, because if Crockett had this, what else did she have? By Friday, a conservative strategist went on national radio and said what many had begun to suspect: this isn't a bomb. It's a leak. A slow, deliberate unraveling, a humiliation campaign that strips away the armor one layer at a time. Trump's camp struck back fast. They filed legal threats. Letters went out to major media outlets warning of defamation suits. Live broadcasts were pressured to insert fact-check disclaimers. A senior official even threatened to sue any network. That gave Crockett airtime, but the panic only made it worse. In Dallas, a local bookstore added Crockett's photo to their "Women Who Spoke Truth" display. In Phoenix, a muralist painted her likeness alongside civil rights icons. In Pennsylvania and Ohio, her name started showing up in voter focus groups, unprompted, and still, not a single word from Melania Trump. Her silence was no longer mysterious. It was suspicious. Usually after controversy, she'd appear, a hospital visit, a staged walk at Andrews, even just a photo op in sunglasses. But this time, nothing. No quote. No image. Not even a glimpse. By day 6, news anchors began counting up. Fox's evening host tried to downplay it. She's always been a private first lady. But this was different. Because for once, the question wasn't why Melania was distant, it was Whether she was distancing herself for good. TMZ ran a blunt headline, "Is Melania already gone?" It wasn't baseless. A former stylist made cryptic comments online, "The last time I saw her in D.C. felt final." A source at Mar-a-Lago told a Miami paper Melania had been unusually guarded, skipping lunches, avoiding friends, and shutting down campaign conversations. Meanwhile, an old video resurfaced, Melania, when asked if she looked forward to campaigning again, simply replying, "We'll see what happens." It landed differently now, and then there were the court documents. The language Crockett had quoted on the House floor was suddenly being analyzed like scripture. Amended Provision D, party may seek full asset revaluation if public scandal directly compromises future income streams. In the event of legal indictment, marital partnership is subject to financial reclassification. These weren't phrases found in every prenup. This wasn't just legal caution. It was deliberate preparation with quiet, intentional telling. On Capitol Hill, a few Republican staffers privately admitted they were getting nervous. One aide from Iowa said it plainly, "If Melania knew something was coming and started planning a way out months ago, that's not a political problem. That's a trust fracture." And voters were noticing. Crockett's office saw a surge in mail, physical letters. Hundreds. Many from women. Retired nurses. Divorced teachers. Stay-at-home mothers. They weren't asking about policy, they were saying, "We believe you. We've lived this too. Keep going." Former military spouses had written in too. One note simply read, "It takes guts to say what no one else will. Don't stop." Her team read the letters out loud during a break between briefings. Kia cried during one. Even Crockett paused. "Just for a moment, they think I'm doing this for attention," she said quietly. "But some of these folks, they've waited decades for someone to name what's right in front of us." At the same time, Trump's team was pushing back hard. They fed stories to friendly outlets claiming Melania was merely a focused on family or reflecting on campaign strategy. They even floated a public appearance at a children's literacy event in Philadelphia, but it was quietly canceled the night before. Sources said Melania refused. It was becoming clear to those closest to her, she wasn't willing to be used as a cleanup prop. And if that was true, then Trump had lost the one thing he'd always counted on, her compliance to a private donor. Dinner in Las Vegas, Trump finally broke. Waving off a question about her absence, he snapped, "They don't know what we've been through. They think they're gonna paint her as a victim. She's fine. She's loyal." But he said it too fast. Too forcefully. One of the donors later told the Nevada Review it felt like watching a man trying to convince himself more than anyone else. Meanwhile, Crockett gave a short radio interview to a small Birmingham station. The host, an older woman with a soft voice, asked her gently, "What made you bring up the First Lady at that hearing?" Crockett paused. "Because if the highest office in this country is built on silence and spin," she said, "then someone's got to ask what that silence is protecting." But that silence was cracking. And the longer it held, the louder it sounded. By Monday morning, the headlines had shifted. No longer was the focus solely on Melania's absence, it was on Jasmine Crockett. She'd gone from disruptor to lightning rod. Conservative talk shows went on the offensive. Headlines screamed about congressional overreach and personal attacks on the First Lady. Several Republican lawmakers called for her to be formally censured. "She crossed the line," barked Congressman Lowell Brent from Arkansas during a Capitol press conference. "There are limits, even in politics." Crockett watched the clip from her office, arms folded, expression unreadable. "They keep saying I crossed the line," she muttered to Kia. But no one's asking why the line was there in the first place. The backlash wasn't random, it was coordinated. Anonymous sources began floating claims that she was connected to foreign donors. A fringe outlet accused her of doctoring the documents. Talk shows speculated about her motives, her funding, her family, and then came the threats. Within 24 hours, her office received dozens of hostile messages. One email read, "You're dead the next time you step outside the Capitol." Another, called her a traitor puppet. The Capitol Police increased security. Officers were stationed outside her home. Her movements were monitored. But Crockett didn't flinch, at least not in public. The pressure didn't let up. Reporters camped outside her apartment. Neighbors complained about the media vans. Her inbox was flooded. Her name dominated the news cycle. That night, she sat alone in her apartment. The phone was off. The TV muted. The lights dimmed. For the first time in days, there was silence. Kia arrived without knocking, carrying a bag of takeout and a worried expression. "Jazz," she said softly, "you don't have to keep going. We can slow this down. Just one statement. Ease off." Crockett shook her head. "I don't get to ease off. That's the whole game. They push us until we sit back down." "I'm not talking politics," Kia whispered. "I'm talking safety." Silence fell again. Crockett leaned forward, elbows on her knees. "They want me scared. But I'm not. I'm mad." The next day, she went on live television, not on a high-profile Sunday show, but a midweek spot on Morning Ground, a modest current affairs program with a loyal working-class audience. The host, Brian Schell, didn't waste time. "Congresswoman, you're in the center of a firestorm. People want to know, was your statement about Melania Trump personal or political?" "It was factual," Crockett replied. "And facts aren't disrespectful just because they make people uncomfortable." Schell pressed. "Do you regret saying it in a public hearing?" "No," she said. "I regret that the truth had to come from me, because everyone else was too scared to say it out loud." That line was clipped and posted across social media within minutes. It landed hard, especially with younger voters and women in swing states. The authenticity rang louder than the backlash. She wasn't rehearsed. She wasn't polished. She was angry, tired, and still standing. Across the country, support surged. Small-town mayors issued statements. College students flooded her inbox with messages of solidarity. Even a few moderate Republicans, speaking off the record, admitted she had changed the conversation. One voter in Erie, Pennsylvania told a local station, "She said what everyone else dances around. You don't go rewriting your prenup unless you know something's coming." Meanwhile, Trump's team scrambled to hold the line. They issued a brief statement. Melania Trump continues to support her husband and his mission to serve the American people. Just 12 words. No video. No appearance. It landed flat. Inside GOP strategy meetings, tension surged. Fundraisers reported rising donor fatigue. Suburban women, once a cornerstone of the re-election effort, were polling lower than expected. What started as a flashpoint had become a flame. Crockett's moment was turning into a movement. She didn't declare war. She just refused to sit quietly while others pretended the emperor still wore clothes. But in politics, momentum is dangerous. Because once it begins, no one controls where it ends. As Crockett's interview spread, the media machine shifted gears. Coverage expanded beyond the hearing, digging into the story behind the marriage, decades of curated appearances, quiet contradictions, and discomfort long ignored. Networks began booking anyone with a traceable connection to the Trumps, former stylists, aides, decorators, bodyguards. Everyone wanted a soundbite. And they got them. A former event planner from West Palm Beach told the Sentinel, Melania never made eye contact unless she had to. She wasn't cold. She was just done. A former White House social secretary said every public appearance was negotiated like a contract, lighting, angles, seating. Always controlled. Even insiders began cracking. A GOP consultant in Arizona admitted on a podcast, "This isn't about a prenup anymore. It's about the image cracking. And voters are watching." Then came the deep dives. The Atlantic Tribune ran a 2-page spread tracking Melania's involvement in Trump's political life from 2015 to now. It showed a pattern: legal preparation, quiet distancing, private trust funds, discreet property transfers. One line stood out. While the country saw hand-holding and stiff smiles, private attorneys worked overtime to protect assets and position. The public couldn't look away. Crockett's team stayed silent, no part two, no escalation. Just quiet. And that silence spoke louder than any soundbite. In Philadelphia, retired lawyers hosted a seminar on high-profile prenup clauses. In Sacramento, a women's shelter raised funds using Crockett's clip, calling her a voice for those stuck behind powerful shadows. The narrative had grown bigger than Trump. It had turned into a referendum on the system. Back in D.C., Trump's team knew control was slipping. He held longer press briefings, defensive and rambling, focused less on policy and more on appearing in charge. One morning, standing before Marine One, he insisted, "Melania and I are great. These Democrats are desperate. They attack my wife because they can't beat me on the economy." But his tone was clipped, his eyes restless. The conviction didn't land. Defenders emerged. Representative Blaine Lork of Missouri accused Crockett of weaponizing marriage. He told Newspoint Radio, "You don't drag someone's family into the floor of Congress. It's dirty politics." But Crockett hadn't dragged anyone. She hadn't attacked a person, she'd asked a question. And the country could feel the difference. One Cincinnati Star op-ed put it best, Crockett didn't drag Melania's name through the mud. She asked why no one ever questions the mud around her. In private corners of Washington, whispers began. Not about Trump 2024, but Crockett 2028. Could she run statewide? Could she go national? A cable host floated it live, "This woman's not going away." And moments like this? They change careers. Still, Crockett stayed quiet. No victory lap. She went back to committee meetings, showed up at community events, let the media spin while she held her ground, but pressure was mounting elsewhere too. In a brownstone near DuPont Circle, 5 Republican strategists huddled around a speakerphone. On a Saturday morning, coffee cups, yellow notepads, tired expressions. The mood wasn't combative, it was rattled. "We're bleeding support in every district where women over 40 are a factor," said a voice from a donor group in Cincinnati. No one pushed back. The polling told the same story. Suburban districts like Sarasota, Mesa, and Columbus were shifting. Women who'd once leaned right were sharing Crockett's clips, quoting her lines, and nodding along. She didn't say Melania was weak, a woman in Ohio told a local paper. She said Melania had a backup plan. "I've had one too. It's called being smart." That wasn't loud. It wasn't radical. But it cut deep. Back at the brownstone, another strategist sighed. "We've drafted 5 different messages. None of them are sticking. People don't care about policy right now. They care about optics." And that was the nightmare. The GOP had built its image on control, strength, and unity. Crockett had pushed her finger through it like it was paper. Worse, she'd done it without yelling, without lying, without flinching. At Trump National in Bedminster, an impromptu war room met late Sunday. No press, no staff, just a campaign manager, legal advisors, and the president. "We need to address the prenup now," someone said. Trump slammed his hand on the armrest. "You want me to give her what she wants? She's a low-level congresswoman. We elevate her, she wins. We say nothing, we still control the narrative." But they didn't. That fantasy had slipped away that day. Fox News dropped a battleground poll. One question stood out: "Do you believe Melania Trump is fully supportive of her husband's campaign?" Yes, 31% no, 49% undecided, 20% it sent shockwaves through the donor network. Not a collapse, but a crack. One executive from Tulsa called and asked, "If a freshman congresswoman can cause this with one clip, what happens if she keeps going?" In response, GOP leaders circled the wagons. Talking points went out to affiliates, claims of privacy invasion, leftist smear campaigns, but none of it stuck. Voters didn't think Crockett went too far. They thought she went where no one else dared. Inside the Trump camp, things turned sour. Leaks started. A staffer told the Press Ledger, "Morale is low. No one likes defending what they can't explain. Melania's silence isn't dignified anymore, it's suspicious. Then came the blow that a local Palm Beach journalist broke a story. Melania had met privately with a real estate lawyer 3 weeks before the Crockett hearing. 2 hours, no security, no PR. It didn't confirm anything, but it didn't need to. Cable news ran with it. Headlines filled in the blanks. And Crockett? She said nothing. She didn't have to. Back in her office, she scanned the article. Kia leaned over her shoulder. They're falling apart. Not yet, Crockett said, sipping her tea. But they're close. Then came the punch on a cool Thursday morning. The Florida Herald published an exclusive. The headline was quiet but devastating. Leaked emails suggest Melania's legal team prepared for separation before campaign launch. It wasn't theory. It was evidence. An email between one of Melania's senior legal advisors and an estate planning firm. The date, 3.5 months before Trump's campaign announcement. Terms like emergency asset restructuring, discrete holdings, and ensuring financial independence in light of potential reputational risk were burned into the public conversation. And that phrase, reputational risk, cycled across every major network. This was no longer gossip. This was time-stamped, lawyer-to-lawyer communication. It confirmed what Crockett had never needed to say outright. In her office, she read the article again. Kia rushed in, holding the printout. It's real. It's finally real. Crockett didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She just said, now they have to respond. And they did. But not how anyone expected. The White House press secretary stepped to the podium for a scheduled briefing. The room was tense. All eyes waited. I'm not here to comment on private legal matters, she said calmly. The First Lady remains focused on her initiatives and her family. No denial. No correction. Just silence. Reporters erupted. Was the marriage stable? Was the prenup changed due to legal exposure? Why had Melania vanished for 10 days? The briefing ended early inside Trump's campaign HQ. Panic spread. Silence was no longer working, but speaking might make it worse. That night, at a rally in Fort Wayne, Trump went off script. You've got these low-energy Democrats like Jasmine Crockett dragging my family through the mud, he barked. They can't win on policy, so they come after my wife. A great woman. Smarter than all of them combined. The crowd clapped. But it was a nervous kind of applause. The energy had changed. One attendee told a local reporter, I'm still voting for him, but something's off. I don't know what's going on with Melania. The narrative had shifted. Crockett posted just one statement that night. 12 handwritten words. When power hides behind silence, truth speaks louder than the shouting. No interviews. No tour. Just a post in the same font and tone as her original campaign flyers. It caught fire, 200,000 shares in the first hour, and the op-eds followed. Texas. Pennsylvania. Florida. Writers calling her not an agitator, but a mirror. Reflecting back a truth the country had tried not to see, but pressure was rising even among Democrats. Some began to worry. She kicked the hornet's nest, one senator told a reporter, and now we all might get stung. Still, Crockett held steady. She hadn't lied. She hadn't doctored anything. She asked questions. The truth did the rest. What she didn't know, what no one knew, was that someone close to the Trumps was about to move. A move that would change everything. On a Sunday evening, nearly 2 weeks into the storm, Melania Trump made a public appearance, alone.